Good morning and welcome to this meeting of the local review body of the 9th of November 2022. I can confirm that the meeting has been properly called and is quorate. Could I first ask members to appoint a chair for the meeting?
Can I nominate Jim Dempster?
It's Jim Dempster here. Who's Councillor Driver?
Alright. Okay, Councillor Driver. Thank you. Councillor Driver has taken the chair.
So good morning members and welcome to this meeting of the local review body. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the council website for public listening. Remote participants, please follow the good practice guidance, which includes muting microphones and switching off your video when you're not addressing the meeting, writing speak in the Teams chat function when you want to contribute. No material should be posted in the chat function if it is intended as part of the discussion. The usual standing orders apply, including that any votes will be undertaken by roll call. All members should speak clearly and directly into the microphone when making contributions when referring to reports. Please provide reference to the relevant page and paragraph to allow everyone to follow. And can I ask people, when they are talking, to take their time so that the British Sign Language interpreters can get most of the information for Councillor Dennerley. Item 2, sediment apologies and chair approval of members' remote participation. Claire, can you provide the sediment apologies, please?
Thank you, Chair. We've currently got 5 members present, yourself and Councillor Beretti in the Council Hall. On Teams we have Councillors Blake, Dempster and Dennerley, Councillors Carruthers and Howie. Councillor Howie's just joined the meeting. On Teams, Councillor Ian Carruthers, I believe is trying to join the meeting but may be late in joining.
Okay, thank you. And I confirm my agreement to the participation of those members recorded as participating remotely. Item 3, do any members have a declaration of interest they wish to make? Okay, thank you very much. Members, you'll be aware that an earlier email was sent with regards item 4 and the intention is to take item 5 first because members may need some time to read the Labour reports which were missing from the papers, and I intend to take a small break so that you can read them in that particular time slot. So Claire, can we go through the local review body proceedings and the documents for the papers?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I can confirm that there are 2 notices of review today. The proposal is to take item 5 first today to allow time for members to read those papers for item 4. To be clear, there was nothing actually missing from the public published papers. It was just sensitive information that would usually be made available to members in advance of the meeting that was noted as not being included. So that's the reason why, to make sure everybody's had sight of the required information. So going first then to item 5, land to the south of Creech Cottages, Sorbet, Newton Stewart, 220713 full. You have your notice of review and related documents, report and handling, observation of the appointed officer and the applicant's agent, notice of review, comments from the applicant's agent, the planning application form, decision notice, relevant extracts from the LDP2 and photos of the application site and locality. The grounds of refusal are the site for the proposed engineering workshop is located in the countryside and is neither within nor adjacent to an existing settlement, nor is there an overriding and compelling site-specific need for a rural location for this site, in particular for this proposed business use. As such, the proposal would represent sporadic business industrial development in a rural area contrary to provisions of the Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 as set out in policies ED2 and ED1B. The proposed dwelling house fails to meet any of the criteria in Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2, policy H3 and associated supplementary guidance on housing in the countryside, which only permits the erection of new houses in the countryside in particular circumstances, and none of these circumstances apply in this case. In particular, it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated that the house is essential for the needs of a business requiring a rural location and the proper functioning of the proposed agricultural engineering business at the location. The requested method of determination: the applicant is asked that the review be dealt with on the basis of a further written submission. The grounds stated in the notice of review are, in summary, the appointed officer did not take into proper account the lack of available land in the locality, which would provide an opportunity for the applicant to develop their business. The appointed officer did not recognise that the opportunity to develop the land associated with the application does exist within policy, and the proposed development of the land fulfils Dumfries and Galloway's policies for economic growth and retaining existing businesses within the region. The description of the application was amended by the planning registration team, placing the erection of the dwelling house before the agricultural engineering workshop, detracting from the main need for the development. You have all the relevant development plan policies listed in your papers, and so the main issues for the LRB to consider are: does the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan? In particular, does the proposal meet the terms of LDP2, policies ED2, business development in rural areas, ED1, business and industry, and H3, housing in the countryside and associated supplementary guidance? Specifically, has it been demonstrated that there is a site-specific need for the proposed business use, and if so, is it essential that a dwelling house is also located within the site? If members conclude that the proposal is contrary to the terms of LDP2, are there any other material considerations which would justify a decision which would represent a departure from the terms of the development plan? And if so, what would the grounds of such a decision be made? And if members are minded to not uphold the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for the proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? And if members are instead minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision, what changes to specific reasoning for the decision would be required? So, having outlined the documents within your papers, it falls to the LRB to determine whether it has sufficient information to consider the review. It is confirmed that no representations from any party will be heard today. The options available to the LRB today are that it can decide it has sufficient information before it to enable it to determine the review today, request further information in the form of written representations. The LRB would be required to state precisely the information it is seeking and who would provide it. Resolve to hold a hearing, again specifying who would be invited to speak and on what matters. Or resolve to hold a site visit, accompanied or unaccompanied. This can be done in conjunction with any of the above, but would obviously not allow a decision to be made today. And if the local review body resolves it has sufficient information and no further procedure is required, then the local review body has the full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. The decision notice will include a statement of the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. You have a planning advisor present at your meeting in relation to this case. It's confirmed that she has not had any involvement in this case prior to the submission of the notice of review, and she was not the case officer or the appointed officer for this application. She is purely here to provide independent advice as needed on matters of planning, policy, law or process to the local review body. You also have a solicitor present here today who will act independently if the local review body require any specific advice on matters of law. So if members are clear and no further clarification is required, I'll ask the Chair now to lead the debate and in the first instance to lead the local review body through the agenda papers together to decide if you have sufficient information before you to make a determination today.
Thanks, Claire. I think I'll go through the usual sort of way I do things, and first of all we'll go through the photographs of the area. So if the officer can take us through the photographs of the area, then we'll go through the papers ourselves to see if there's any clarification or questions required. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Can I have the first slide? Thank you. Just before I start, the slides and photographs are the same as those provided on pages 413 to 429 of your papers today. The first slide shows a location plan, which shows the application site located to the west of the A746 public road, approximately a kilometre north of the village of Sorby. Next, please. This is a closer view showing the location of the site in relation to Creek Cottages to the north and the former Creek Mill to the south. Next, please. This is an aerial photograph of the site. Shows the irregular shaped area of unused land, which extends to approximately 0.65 hectares. In general, the site levels rise slightly from the adjoining road level before falling away gently to the west. It's currently covered in relatively dense self-seeded tree and scrub growth, and the roadside part of the site includes a stopped-up section of the public road, which was created by previous road realignment. Next slide. Moving on to the photographs, this first view looks north towards the site on A746 from a point which is adjacent to Creek Mill and the converted cottages there. So the application site is on the left and sort of that scrub area. Next, please. Moving further north towards the site, this is a view looking northwards again on the public road, showing the existing informal access point to the site where the road has previously been realigned and stopped up. Can the next slide. This is the front part of the site looking northwards towards Creek Cottages. Next, please. And this is turning to look generally westwards, again in the front part of the site, and it's a view towards the main part of the site which is proposed for development. Next, please. This is a panoramic view, again of the front part of the site, looking generally in a north or northwesterly direction. Next, please. This is a view looking generally westwards, again from the front roadside part of the site. It looks towards the main part of the site proposed for development. Next, please. Moving sort of into the site, this is a view of the main part of the site proposed for development, looking in a westward direction. Next, please. This is the proposed site, looking generally southwest. Next, please. And this is a panoramic view, again, of the main part of the site proposed for development. Next, please. This is a view looking back towards the front part of the site, towards the road, and that's from the main part of the site proposed for development. Next, please. Moving back out of the site onto the public road, this is the position proposed for the new access to the site. Next, please. This is a panoramic view of the site, again from the public road. Next, please. Moving northwards, this is a view looking back in a southerly direction on the A746 from a position near Creek Cottages. Next, please. And this is a panoramic view of the site looking south, again from near Creek Cottages. Next, please. That concludes the presentation.
Thanks very much, members. We'll now go on to the paperwork itself and any chances of clarifications and questions. The first group of papers is on page 119 to 129, which is the notice of review and related documents. Any questions on those or challenge? Okay, we'll then go on to the report on handling and related correspondence, pages 133 to 243. Okay. Can't see any questions. Pages 247 to 271 is the observation of the appointed officer on the applicant agent's notice of review. Any questions on that one? Okay, yep. Councillor Bretty.
Yeah, sorry, there's quite a lot of pages to get through, Chair. I've noticed that in some of the other pages, it also refers to this as a rural location, but it doesn't seem to have taken into account this was, in fact, an industrial location at one time. And don't know if the case officer was aware of that and who put up these reports.
Are you aware of that?
Yes, in the case officer's delegated report of handling, they do note the historical use of the site. Obviously, that has long since gone, and the site has naturally regenerated, so there isn't really any evidence of that historical use. It is a rural location on the basis that it is located out with any settlement within the local development plan.
If the Chair would indulge, can I go into a bit of the history as well?
Yep.
The site itself had, as you notice, and from the images, although I can't see it, but I do know it from historically, that there was the railway sidings that used to come from Newton Stewart and go all the way down to Whithorn. So on that site where this says factory, so if you look back on the map, it says factory. That originally was part of the railway sidings and was then developed into a cheese factory. And the reason the cheese factory is there is because the settlement of Sorbet is outside the smell zone of the cheese factory. And therefore, that was why that area was industrialised, because it was right next to the railway yards. And when the railway yards were removed in the 60s, the cheese factory remained. So it's, to me, it's not as if it's not inside the industrial, the inhabited area for good reasons, but it's still actually, it was still used. And when it stopped being a cheese factory, it went to being a monumental stonemason's yard. So it had been used up to about 8 years ago. So I can't see why it's not been still recognised as an industrial area, Chair.
Thanks. I'll bring Jim Dempster in first before we get an answer on that.
Thanks, Chair. No, just to clarify that as well, if it's no registered on any of our documents as an industrial area, then its past history isn't relative at this particular moment in time, unless that's something we want to stop the meeting and investigate, because there is no evidence presented by the case officer that this has ever been an industrial area, and that's not why it's being considered today. It's been considered as open space today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Did you get that? Right.
If you can just repeat what Councillor Dempster said, because I didn't catch it all.
Jim, can you repeat that?
What I said was, if members are inclined to consider this as an industrial area, that will have to be established, because that is not what the case officer has said in the report. And we are being asked to consider it as open countryside. And I think part of the report said at one time it was used for agricultural purposes, and agricultural land is never considered as brownfield in terms of development purposes. So if we're considering taking account of Councillor Barretti, somebody's going to have to establish the accuracy of that. We cannot simply proceed on that basis today. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Councillor Dennerley.
Good morning, Chair. Thank you very much to Councillor Barretti. I understand and agree with the clarification with regards to the area, with the brownfield area. It wasn't a greenbelt area. Jim had said already that that area was a brownfield area, so I understand what he's saying by that it's natural growth, and that any specific native plants in the wild area are just overgrown, really, and there's no specific need to consider that as a greenbelt area. And if people are using that to access the footpaths and the surrounding areas.
Okay, thanks for that, John. I've got Ian Carruthers, and then I'll move on because we're not in the stage where we're actually discussing the application yet. So I'm just with points of clarification and questions. Okay, Ian.
Thank you very much, Chair. That's one of the points I was going to make. You've touched on. I think when we get through this and get to the end, then we can come back and revisit it. But I think that the point that Councillor Barretti was making, that this is potentially a brownfield site. Ultimately, that's up for discussion later on. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Okay, so we then move on to the planning application form submitted on the 5th of January 22 and associated plan support and information 2790388. Any questions and challenges or comments? And then we have the decision notice at 391 to 398. And then we have the relevant extracts from Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2, pages 401 to 409. And we have seen the photographs again. So, okay, members, we'll go into discussion on this one.
Chair, I had my hand up.
Yeah, Ian. Yes, Ian.
Apologies, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Apologies. My IT appointment's been a bit slow today. It's just a poor signal, I think, where I am. If you don't mind, Chairman, just a bit of clarity in regards to page 304. It just wasn't coming in. And it's the first paragraph at 4.1. And it refers to the second sentence, and it goes on and says, for business and industrial land across the west of the region, the total available land remains the same across mid-Galloway housing market area, only 2% of the total allocation across the whole Dumfries and Galloway. I just want that point clarified for accuracy, Chair, because I think it's if that's wholly accurate as being described there, I think it's a point I'll probably bring up later on. Thank you.
Can you clarify that point?
I'm unable to clarify just on the exact percentage, but obviously in the west of the region, settlements are smaller and more spread out, which leaves less opportunity to allocate land for business and industrial purposes. It is centred in sort of the larger towns and villages across the region, and obviously the Mackers is a predominantly very rural area with only very small settlements. So that sort of sets out the reasoning why there is such a small allocation over in the west of the region.
You happy with that, Ian?
Thank you, Chair. I'll probably come back to that. It's the accuracy of the 2% or thereabout, not the justification why the councils had that level of bias towards the east of the region, which is outlined within the report. It just is whether that's accurate or not, because I think it's something that needs to be picked up on later on. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. Members, we're going into we're in session sort of to say and looking at this particular application. I am of the opinion I'm pretty happy with this one actually, for want of a better words, and I would like to actually see this happen because of the potential for the agricultural engineering workshop and the business actually going in there. But I'll listen to other members first. So we'll ask Ian and then Ian Howie and then Councillor Carruthers.
Thanks, Chair. My view pretty much reflects your own, and that's submitted by the Community Council in this area, which where obviously there's overwhelming community support for this on the basis of retaining some form of employment and business activity in the rural economy in the west of the region. And when the alternative is basically we're going to preserve a piece of land which is described within the report as basically just an unkempt piece of land. And on that basis, it's certainly a straight choice of that. My sympathy would be to sharing your view on this, Chair, that we support the application.
Okay, thanks, Ian. Ian Carruthers, did you have your hand up there?
I did, thank you, Chair. It was I'm probably like-minded to yourself, but my point was, yourself and Councillor Howie, that is, my point was in regards to the added for further written submissions. Claire touched on that. I just wondered if she could have expanded on that. I missed exactly why they were asking for the further written submissions.
Claire, can you clarify that point?
It's just an option they can give in the notice of review form for further procedures, so they've ticked that box.
No. So basically, it's just one of the options to take forward, Ian, if that is required. I've got Councillor Barretti and then Councillor Dempster.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I know the Chair's going to say it's good to have local knowledge here. I used to have to go down to the cheese factory when it was working to pick up cheese that we would sell, and all of that area there was industrial. But going back to what one of the other councillors said, and looking at the representations from some of the other people, and I suspect most of them are from the farming community, I know that, and I agree with the Chair, that going forward we're talking about a change in the way agriculture is going to be done, which means that area there is exactly central to the Mackers for farming equipment to get to it, as opposed to having to go up the main road, which would make things difficult for other users. Plus, the type of farming equipment now we're going to be seeing in the future is going to be very much more sophisticated. Engineers will not be able to do this kind of work in the field. They will need to have dedicated spots. And as I agree that we've got to think about the future here, this is already to me a brownfield site, because I used to go past this maybe once a month or once a week when I was going up and down to the Isle. I don't agree with the case officer's report that it is land. It's just land that has been abandoned and grown up. And biodiversity, yes, it's going to grow. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Councillor Brady. Councillor Dempster.
Aye, I'm not going to go against the discussion about an engineering workshop, because probably, given the limited land that's available, we're all sympathetic. But we're also discussing or considering a house in the countryside that's not necessary for a business to function. The reasons are outlined in the paper, but it's not necessary, because I'm sure every one of us here and every one of us on the council will know someone that runs a business and doesn't live adjacent to it. So there are really two elements of this, or to this report, and I'd be very concerned if we simply decided to allow a house on the basis that we are sympathetic to commercial development, because they're two completely different things, although they're contained in the same paper, Chair.
Thanks, Jim. Councillor Carruthers.
Thank you, Chair. So just to say my piece in regards to that, if we're considering this now and we'll make the decision, I do sympathise with your initial remarks, Chair, but I do think it would be the beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site, and Councillor Barrett has added to that actually post 1949. The use and what's been established, so the principal development, I think, is probably beyond doubt that's been there already. That is historically. This is a change to a degree. We're an agricultural building and obviously a dwelling house has just been outlined with Councillor Dempster. But obviously, the two, going back to page 304, and that's accurate. My understanding, it's not far away from my own past historical reading of the housing market areas, the allocation of sites within the local development plan and so forth. But if that's accurate, there is a strong bias towards the Easter region. I think myself, Chair, know exactly why that is, and that's been agreed. But I think this has come up before, whether it's through the scheme of delegation to plan officers, whether it's through the plan application committee or even at local review body. There is a lack of sites, available sites in a rural area in the west of the region, but that really needs to be addressed through the local development plan process. But I'm very much for, because of the demand that's here, established business is growing, it's thriving. I think there's a number of reasons why you could support this, but in real terms, because it's established businesses looking to grow, and it is the beneficial redevelopment of a brownfield site, Chair. I could go on, but I'll give the other members a chance to have their point as well. But certainly keen to support this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I can't see any other members want to come in, but from my opinion, I think that this sorry, Laura.
Thank you, Chair. It was just to address the issue of the policies upon which this was refused. My understanding, and Lindsay can assist in this one, but my understanding is that this has been decided on the basis that it is on a rural site, and the issue that the applicant's agent has taken is not with the rural nature of it, it's with the application of the policy. So it's for members to bear in mind that if they're now saying that they believe that this is not a rural site, but this is actually a brownfield site, we don't actually have any arguments in front of us on that basis. We don't have any evidence in front of us of that basis. So instead, are we saying that this is something that we do believe is, that the Council does believe is in accordance with the policies that has been decided on, and taking a different view from the planning officer at the time? Or are we saying that this is something that they want to take into account material considerations? So it's just when I can understand that there's a will, a feeling and a will that you're wanting to decide in favour of this, but it's just to draw you back to look at the policies and the actual evidence that you have in front of you. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Laura, for the reminder. In my opinion, I think the fundamental of the basis of the planning application is an exception to policy, but under the need for the economic value of that in having that business in the area that is actually there, the potential of reuse of a site that was previously an industrial site, although it's classed as rural now. The understanding is in the country, and that is I think to me in this particular one, it would be a benefit to the local area to have that business running from where it actually the application site has been put forward. So, as an exception to policy, I would suggest that we approve this planning application for the economic benefit of the area in which it stands, and the normal sort of recommendations and conditions of the plan application are placed upon that to such, and I would put that forward to the members here. Jim.
Thanks, Chair. I'm still concerned because one of the purposes of having a single planning applications committee created was because when the time there were 4 districts or regions with their own planning authority, some had a far more cavalier attitude than others to what was recognised as a brownfield or former location of a dwelling. And we should be consistent. That consistency is about council policies. And the house does not fit currently with council policy. And we should not be granting it on the basis that and I have no doubt Councillor Barrett is right as regards to its former use. That's not what the papers say. So I'm really concerned that we're going ahead with a house associated with an industrial unit simply because it would be handy for somebody in the market. I don't think that's the right approach to take. And I would not support the development of a house without further investigation in the history of this site. Thanks, Chair.
So are you putting that forward as an amendment, Jim, to go with the officer's recommendation?
Yes.
Thank you. Ian Carruthers.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to support your proposal for approval in this case, but I would just reiterate probably what's within the report, taken in regards to what Laura, as you said, but contained within the report, the information that I've seen is that we have a business that a chartered accountant has wrote a letter to us. It says that the business is viable and it's growing. It is expanding. It talks about the security reasons in real terms why the dwelling should be there along with the agricultural engineering shed. So it says that the way the business works is 14 to 16 hour days at times. There's expensive equipment, tools, plants, so on and so forth, whether it's the owner of this business or these actual customers. So for security reasons, it needs to be there. The fact that it's there as well, that the A746 used to be as part of this site, that was an A-class road. So the construction of that road is still there. It's still for by it be an old part of the road, but the whole construction is there. It was just abandoned. That would indicate strongly that it is a brownfield site. So come back to the policy side, I think you've got a number of things there without pointing to the actual, but ED1 and ED2 as well in regards to your economic development that you've outlined, Chair. I think there's a number of reasons where you could tie this into policy and have a slightly different interpretation in regards to the previous decision. And that's where I feel very strongly that actually reading the information that's within the report, there's enough evidence within this report that's been submitted to us by both the applicant and, with the applicant in particular, but the officers that have covered that certainly as part of the report handling and such like, Chair. But I mean, I'm more than happy to support it and hopefully we'll come to a conclusion where it can fit in the policies. Thank you. And second, your motion.
Thanks, Ian. I'm going to bring Laura in at the moment.
Thank you, Chair. It's been touched upon by Councillors Dempster and Carruthers, but what we are dealing with, although it is one application, it's two separate buildings. So it's not only that you have to be required, you have to require to consider whether or not the business itself meets the tests in the policy, but also the house associated with it. Unfortunately, you cannot split the two as have been put together as an application. So if members feel that while the business, yes, but perhaps not the house, then unfortunately you would have to refuse the application because you cannot split them.
Thanks for that advice, Laura. We have Ian Howie, then Jim Dempster.
Thanks, Chair. Just going back to my previous role, I was probably one of the most experienced crime prevention officers in rural Scotland, and I would fully support the House being there as a means of providing national surveillance to deter criminal activity when there's high-value goods in the particular area. So on that basis, I certainly would support the House being there. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. And then we've got Ian Blake.
Thank you, Chairman. To be honest, I was actually going along the lines of supporting Jim Dempster. I do have certain concerns about that, although Ian Carruthers kind of clarified that when I emphasised the need for security. I would certainly, excuse me, my assistant is barking in the background here. I would question Ian Howie's comment that he's the most experienced crime prevention officer in the west of Scotland, having been one myself, but however, that's for another day. Overall, I would actually support the application now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Ian. Ian Carruthers, do you want to come back in?
I'm still waiting to speak, Chairman.
Apologies, Chair. I'll just not take my hand down. No.
Okay. Jim, do you want to come back in?
Yes, please. I am really concerned that we are in a meeting discussing security and presenting that as a case for allowing someone to build a house. Fences, padlocks, chains, guard dogs, CCTV, and I am really concerned because every application that comes before us after today, if someone pops in the word security, that then qualifies the construction of a house. I'm really, really concerned, and I'm concerned that members should be sympathetic to that approach because it's not part of council policy, and we're driving a horse and cart through council policy with our eyes open. It's not acceptable, Chairman, and I'm really concerned that we're doing such a thing. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Jim. The officer wants to come in and specify the security side of things with regard to policy.
Thank you, Chair. The adopted supplementary guidance for housing in the countryside makes it quite clear at paragraph 3.7 that security is unlikely to be sufficient justification for an essential worker, as this service can be provided without the need for a residence.
Yeah, thanks, Tony.
Chair, we're talking about the agricultural industry. Number of times I've had to maybe go out at 10 o'clock in the evening and tractors are working, harvesters are working. There are certain periods of the year when the agriculture industry is working 24 hours a day. Now, it's quite different if you have to travel to your place of work and pick up a vehicle and then go out to a client. It's another when you're woken up at 3 o'clock and the farmer says, my vehicle is stuck, can you come out and fix it? And the engineer will go out, pick up his van and go straight away, leaving his wife or whatever at home guarding whatever is there. We're not talking about a 9-to-5 industry, we're talking about during the year a 24-hour industry.
Right, I'm going to bring this to a close because we're going to end up talking about security and different policies that probably didn't come into effect. Laura, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it was just also to highlight that as this is one application for a business and a house, there is no control over which is built first. So you could have a situation where the house is built, the business does not follow, and then you've got a house in the countryside which has been permitted because councillors have felt that it's required for a business that then doesn't follow through, and you've got a house that is unrestricted. Ordinarily, we would normally require that there is a shown established business need for the house to be there before we would grant permission for it.
Yeah, but coming back to what you said, this is one application as opposed to two separate applications. I'm just wondering if a condition that the business is built first rather than the house can move forward that way.
We have in other situations, in a fishery that went to the Planning Application Committee, we used a planning obligation whereby we said that the business had to be developed first before the house came. So it would be possible that, I understand, has not, well, because it's just been discussed at the moment, it wouldn't have been discussed with the agent. That could be a possible way. We try not to use planning obligations. That would be one way to try and timetable it if members are feeling that they wish to go forward.
Okay, members. If there's nobody else, obviously, I've made a suggestion that this is the officer's recommendation is reversed and approved as an exception to policy. This is because economic benefit, potential reuse of the site and the benefit to the local community. Also, as part of the planning application, that the business is built first, or should I say the business units are built first prior to the living accommodation. Jim, I can't see anybody seconding yours unless there anybody is.
No, that's happy. I'm happy to record my dissent, Chair, because by far the cleanest way is to refuse this and let the applicant come back, and at the same time give our staff another opportunity to explore the previous history of the site. No, that I doubt Councillor Beretti or anyone else, but it would then be in a formal a report to members, and that would be far more acceptable in my opinion. So if there's nobody got support, I'll certainly have my dissent recorded, Chair.
Okay, we'll record your dissent. So members, are we happy to move forward that way, and can I ask Claire to confirm the decision of the LRB?
Okay, thank you, Chair. I can confirm the local review body have agreed to reverse the decision of the appointed officer and approve the application as an exception to policy on the basis of the economic benefit, the potential reuse of the site, the benefit for the local community, the security aspects for the housing, and also the planning obligation that the business be developed first before the house. It's also noted the dissent from Councillor Dempster, having failed to secure a seconder for his amendment to uphold the decision of the appointed officer and refuse the application.
Thank you, and make sure the conditions are fit for that.
Yeah, sorry, subject to the usual conditions as well.
Thank you. Members, will now move back to...
Chair, it's Ian Crothers.
Sorry, Ian?
Sorry, Chair, just what Claire said there, because you changed the language slightly when you said that the business unit should be developed first or at the same time, rather than the business, because I think the business already established, we've got evidence that tells us that, but it's the business unit, it's the agricultural engineering shed I think we're talking about. I think that needs to be changed, Chair.
Sorry, Claire did say units. Yeah. Sorry.
Sorry, I've just, it was misreading my own writing, Councillor Carruthers. So, yes, business units developed first. Okay, thank you.
Members, we're happy to move on to the next one. You'll be aware that you've been sent an email regarding the item number 4 with some additional information. It wasn't required for the papers, but there is additional information with regards to Labour report in this. So I would recommend we have a small break for 10 minutes so that people can read that. They are only sort of 5 pages each, and then we'll come back in. Okay. Okay, members, welcome back. Hope everybody is here. To reconvene, we'll go now to item 4, which is Knockin Maze, Port Patrick's and Ra, refusal of planning permission for erection of a dwelling house. I think on this one I'll do the same again. I think we've got David Sutty with us to take us through the photographs. David, are you there?
Morning, Chair. Morning, member.
Just a second, David. I'm getting my programme all mixed up. I should ask Claire to go through the process first.
Okay, thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. You've got this item. You've got your notice of review, report on handling, observation of the appointed officer on the applicant's agent's notice of review, comments of the applicant's agent, planning application form, decision notice, relevant extracts from the LDP2, and the photos of the application site and locality. The grounds of refusal are: it has not been satisfactorily demonstrated that a new dwelling house is essential at this location for the operational needs of the agricultural business, and accordingly the proposal is contrary to the policy of the Council as stated in Dumfries and Galloway Council Local Development Plan 2, Policy H3, and to national policy as set out in the Scottish Planning Policy, which permit the erection of new houses in the countryside only in special circumstances identified in development plans. None of these circumstances apply in this case. The development fails to meet the criteria in Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 2 policies OP2 and H3, as the proposed dwelling house will be located some 1.5 miles distance approximately from the associated farm steading, and therefore would be physically and visually separate from the operational hub, contrary to policy, and where no siting, justification or consideration of potentially more appropriate development opportunities that may exist within the farm holding has been provided. Requested method of determination: the applicant is asked that the review be dealt with on the basis of an assessment of the review documents only, with no further procedure. The grounds stated in the notice of review: in summary, the farm is split into 2 parcels of land, with just one house on the steading at several Glen Stockdale, the northern parcel. There are no other dwellings on the farmland, and none have been severed from the farm within the last 10 years. The applicant intends to increase the amount of cattle, and his son has agreed to work full time with him to enable this to happen. A new house would allow for the welfare of the cattle on the southern parcel of land to be monitored. The house would not be an isolated location. There are 5 houses within 400 metres of the site, none of which are related to farms. The applicant is in an impossible position. In planning terms, there would be no justification for the house unless the livestock on the farm had been increased, but additional labour needs to be available in order to maintain livestock welfare. Reference is made to the Agri-Environment Climate Scheme. The applicant intends to retire to the new house once the current development of the business has been completed and the farm has been handed over to his son. This transitional process can take up to 2 years. You have all the relevant development plan policies listed on page 28 of your papers. And so the main issues for the local review body to consider are: firstly, does the local review body consider that the test of exceptional circumstances have been met in order to justify accepting new matters accepted within the notice of review, namely the revised SEC Labour report dated June 27th of June 22, applicants' retirement plans and the Agri-Environment Climate Scheme, given that these matters were not timorously provided to the appointed officer before the application was determined. And so, okay, does the proposal comply with the terms of the development plan? In particular, does the proposal meet the terms of LDP 2 Policy H3, Housing in the Countryside and associated supplementary guidance? Specifically, has it been demonstrated that it meets the requirements for it to be regarded as essential for the needs of agriculture or other business requiring a rural location? If the principle is considered acceptable, is the siting of the proposed house appropriate in terms of both its location relative to the farm unit and in the context of its position within an open countryside? If it is not considered that the proposal accords with the terms of the development plan, are there a set of material considerations of sufficient weight to justify a departure from the terms of the development plan? If so, what reasons would members give for such a decision if it were considered that the proposal departs from the terms of the development plan? And if members are minded not to uphold the appointed officer's decision and instead grant planning permission for this proposal, what set of conditions and reasons would members wish to see attached, if any? And if members are instead minded to vary the terms of the appointed officer's decision, what changes to the specific reasoning for the decision would be required? So again, having outlined your papers, it falls to the LRB to determine whether it has sufficient information to consider the review. It's confirmed that there will be no representations from any party here today. You have the same options available to you as outlined at the previous item, and if the local review body resolves that you have sufficient information, then no further procedure is required, and you have the full powers to uphold, reverse or vary a determination. The decision notice would again include a statement in the terms in which the planning authority has decided the case reviewed. We have the planning advisor present at the meeting for this case. It's confirmed that he has not had any involvement in this case for the submission of the notice of review. It was not the case officer or the appointed officer for the application. Here purely to provide independent advice as needed on matters of planning, policy, law or process to the local review body. You also have a solicitor present today who will act independently if the local review body require any specific advice on matters of law. So members are clear, and again no further clarification is required. I'll ask the Chair now to lead the debate and in the first instance lead you through your papers together to decide if you have sufficient information for you to make a determination today.
Thanks, Claire. I see Jim wants to speak and then John.
Thanks, Chair. And I know we've not got to this yet, but can you just direct your attention to agenda item 3, the observation of the appointed officer and agent's notice of review, in particular page 59, paragraph 1.6, where the officer says, given this information not produced timely during the assessment plan application for consideration of the appointed officer prior to the determination application made, and no exceptional circumstances have been detailed as to its late submission, no consideration should be afforded to such during this review. So I'm anxious to make sure that the planning officer is given, I think, is her place in this case, and we should refer this back, I think, for the planning officer to determine the new information that's been provided, or we might find ourselves in a situation where we consider only the original application. It might be that it's rejected and it comes back with additional information. It's far better, in my opinion, going back through the process and taking all of this information to the appointed officer and getting a comprehensive report from her, and then deciding this, including the new information that's been brought forward after the decision of the appointed officer to refuse this application. That'd be my view and my approach, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. And I was actually going to be saying this myself under the assessment by LRB under the second bullet point, which requests further information in the form of written representation to the LRB, and state precisely what that information is. John Dennerley, you wanted to come in?
So it was just an earlier point with regards to receiving the documentation and reading through it. I just wanted to ask for a summary, please, of the details, but you've already covered that in Claire's explanation in detail, so I'm clear now. So thank you very much, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Ian Crillers.
actually my understanding is we can't put it back to through the scheme of delegation, but we could ask for further written submissions, which I think you're talking about. Happy to hear what our advice is, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, David, do you want to come in on that?
Morning again, members. Yes, quite happy to do that. This relates to what's called Section 43B of the Planning Act, which basically says that in the review process, a party to the proceedings is not to raise any matter which was not before the appointed person at the time the determination reviewed was made, unless that party can demonstrate, one, that the matter could not have been raised before that time. Well, I think you've got an email exchange between the agent and the case officer going on about that. So I'm not, in my opinion, satisfied that it definitely couldn't have been raised before the determination. And secondly, that it's not been raised before the time was a consequence of exceptional circumstances. So you have that test. To answer Councillor Dempster's point there, the decision has been made by the appointed officer. The Planning Authority has issued a decision in respect of this application. So that particular process cannot be undone. What you do have is the option of deciding that there are exceptional circumstances and you do wish to accept the new material that's been put in. And consider that as part of your review process today. Alternatively, if you're not satisfied to take these documents, you don't feel there was exceptional circumstances, then the correct course of action is to actually uphold the original decision, and the applicant has the opportunity of resubmitting a further application, which they could then put all the documentation in at that time, and that would be considered as part of that application. But I don't know if Laura wants to clarify anything, if I've missed anything, but that's how I understand the process.
Okay, thanks, David. Laura?
Thank you, Chair. I would suggest that there is another option for you to consider, one which we have followed before, where we've had this situation where there has been information provided to us at a late stage which we felt would be material to making a decision, but because it was late we couldn't. And in those circumstances we've used Regulation 15 written submissions. So we have specifically written out to the applicant's agent, saying to them what we want further information on, and then they can use that as a vehicle to give you the late information. And if I remember correctly, when we did that before, the appointed officer, not the original case officer that looked at it, but the appointed officer then had an opportunity to comment on it. So that might be a third option that you want to consider.
So sorry, David, when you go.
This further documentation was submitted with the notice of review, so it's not late. It's just been submitted as part of the review. So it is before yourselves. It unfortunately was circulated late today, but it did come in with the notice of review. So I don't know if that changes things at all.
And I think for benefit of the doubt, I think we have to go through the process because we have an application in front of us, and potentially there's a way forward there for a review of the assessment with further representations later on. That's certainly the way I'm thinking at the moment. But members, I think if we go through the process first, and I'll ask sort of David to go through the photographs as we've done in the previous application, and then we'll get into the suggestions of how we take this forward. Thanks. So David, can we go through the photographs?
Certainly, Chair. Yes, this is exactly the same photos as you have on pages 109 to 111 of your papers, all taken from Google Street View. So there's 6 slides in total, 3 views, and then 3 zoomed in versions of the same. So the first one that you're seeing there is looking southwards along the public road, the U5W, and you can see that there's a sort of hairpin corner that goes round to the private access on the left-hand side there. That's the road that goes down to the application site. And the next slide just shows a zoomed-in version of that same shot. So what you can see there in the centre of your slide is where the road, the access road, turns round to the left. That bit of grass in the foreground, that's where the house would be sited. And the next slide is looking eastwards from the public road again, across to, you can see there's one property nearby, and then you can see where the hedge line is of the access road. And the next slide just is a zoomed in version of that. It says it's in the centre of the photo. It's probably just to the left of the centre there, where that grass area is where the house would be. And the last contextual photo just shows it looking northeast. So again, the site is over to the right-hand side of the road, and zoomed in again on the last photo. You can see the context of the rural agricultural land that is around it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, David. Members, we'll just go through the paperwork in front of us, the report in front of us. So we've got notice of review and related document pages 15 to 23. Any points of clarification on that? Jim?
I just want to share on page 17, the second last statement of reasons. Have you raised any matters which were not before the appointed officer at the time the determination of the application was made, and the boxes ticked or crossed? No. That's clearly not accurate. What do we do with that?
David?
Chair, I noticed that as well, that whilst they've ticked the box no, if you go across the page on page 18, then they've listed a number of supporting documents they have submitted. So it's slightly contradictory there.
Happy with that, Jim?
Yes, aye.
Thank you. We'll then go on to the report and handling related correspondence, pages 27 to 53. Any points of clarification? Then the observations of the appointed officer on the applicant agent's notice of review, pages 57 to 62. Any points of clarification? Then the comments of applicant's agent on observation of the appointed officers, pages 65 to 68. Any points of clarification? Then the planning application form submitted on 23rd of February 22, associated plans and support information, pages 71 to 87. Any points of clarification? The decision notice from Dumfries and Galloway Council dated 16th of June, pages 91 to 96. Any points of clarification? And then relevant extracts for Dumfries and Galloway Local Development Plan 99 to 105. That's normal, and the photos of the application which we just went through on David's PowerPoint presentation. So, members, over to yourselves. Jim?
Thanks, Chair. The simplest and cleanest way would be to agree with the officer's decision and refuse this application, and that would give the applicant time to bring back all the information and give an officer time to assess it, because I'm quite sure if this is refused, there will be a renewed submission. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Ian?
Thank you, Chair. I think you spoke earlier about potential further written submissions. I just wonder if you could clarify if your thoughts are still the same or not.
Thanks, Ian. David actually sort of clarified the position there when he said that the information was there and the officer's report back to us had that actually covered. So I'm of the same opinion as Jim at the moment. The cleanest way is to refuse or agree with the officer's recommendation and then get the applicant to move it back. Ian, do you want to come back in that before I bring John in?
No, I'm fine, thanks, Chair. I'm just considering what you've said there in regards to that, but no, thank you. I'll be able to take what John's saying.
Okay, thanks. John?
Thank you very much, Chair. I really appreciate your explanation and clarification and going through the pages. And I'm clear on that. And the planning officer, the rejection, I would support that as well. Jim, and I would like to support what they said with regards to making the decision. I think we should research more information and wait for the future application for planning.
Thanks very much for that, John. Any other members? Sorry, Tony.
No, I just agree with the previous comments, Chair, yourself and the other councillors about what you've said.
Thank you, Councillor Britty. Members, it looks as if there isn't any other alternative, but we agree with the officer's recommendations within the report and I hope that this comes back at a future planning application. Are we agreed with that?
Chair, I don't want to criticise you, but it's a decision, no a recommendation.
Sorry, Jim, of course. But you're used to criticising me, Jim.
As long as you take it in the kindest sense, Chair.
Absolutely, always do. Okay, members, so that's the decision. I'll ask the clerk to confirm that.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Can confirm that the local review body have agreed to uphold the decision of the appointed officer and refuse the application for the same reasons as stated in the papers.
Okay, members, there's no further business. Thank you very much for your input and your comments today, and I'll close the meeting at that and probably catch you at a future one.